Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and a couple weeks ago we were talking about a new VPN law that was basically coming into effect, is basically all the way there in a place called Utah, a pretty big state in the United States, and it turns out that their new law is targeting the VPNs. Now we all talked about age verification and all that stuff, but this is where, honestly, the parties involved basically piss me off to no end. And I want to talk about it. I want to yap about this situation. So basically, the law that they introduced, which, again, if you look carefully over here, is SB 73. Now, the big important part about SB 73 was what we read last time, was when they started focusing on the virtual private networks. See, all these countries that are making age verification laws, every child, man, woman, whoever, is going to their phone, going to their computer, purchasing access to a VPN service, and bypassing the shitty laws that have been placed. Now look, I have said countless times, if you want this to be effective, go to the parents, put pressure on the parents to put age verification on their devices and watch what their kids are doing on the internet, okay? Instead of turning the entire internet into some fucking draconian control mass surveillance web that affects every one of you and me watching. So to give you an idea, this law over here, which targeted VPNs, basically outright said, listen, any individual is considered to be accessing the website from the state if the individual is actually located in the state, regardless of whether the individual is using a VPN, proxy server, any means to disguise or misrepresent the individual's geographical location to make it appear that the individual is accessing the website from a location outside the state. The commercial entity that operates the website that contains a substantial portion of materials harmful to minors may not facilitate or encourage the use of a VPN. So basically, there was a lot of people looking into this and wondering, okay, listen, first off, from a lawyer perspective, how the fuck do you limit free speech by telling the country or telling, people visiting, hey, here's how you can use a VPN to hide your privacy, right? But the other reality of it was this first fucking section. Now, from a technical perspective, a whole bunch of companies, VPN ones in specific, came out and said that this is an unresolvable compliance paradox. I mean, how the fuck can you, as a person, verify if somebody is even using a VPN or if they're not? What are the methods associated to this, right? And to give you an idea, a lot of people can hide themselves from the internet. Basically, for every company that was effectively forced to follow this rule, they were like, listen, we either have to age verify every motherfucker on the planet or try to remove access from you. A lot of these things are impossible. If you're going to say that people are pretending to go to states like California through a VPN digitally to access our website, but they really live in Utah and you're going to actually punish us, how the fuck are we supposed to deal with that, right? For instance, right, to show you, ladies and gentlemen, the problem with VPN companies is this is a website known as What Is My IP Address? Now, if I open up a VPN service and basically connect to a place like Japan, for instance, right, which I did over here, and now that I refresh the page and connect, you can see that my IP information does report that I'm actually from Tokyo, Japan. Now, interestingly enough, this is why VPNs kind of have a bit of an issue, because generally speaking, it's not as if your internet service provider is going to report as NordVPN or anything. It'll probably report as a company called Packet Hub SA or something similar, where if you go to their website, basically it's a place where even you and I can go to them, probably strike up a deal and purchase VPS space from them. So companies purchase space, they set up their own VPN provisions, and they basically allow you to connect through their client, through these servers all over the world. That's how VPNs work. So a lot of these companies were like, wait a minute, how the fuck are we supposed to stop individuals? Because it just doesn't make any sense. How are we going to stop an individual from accessing your website if they're behind a VPN? So of course, ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, while the law is technically flawed, at the end of the day, there's also other situations here that, have been brought up by age verification, fucking advocates themselves too. So one of these anti-Coomer people, the anti-Coomer advocates, this is Smith Alley, who's a guy that is, according to the time of this article, like a 22-year-old person. He said that he was exposed at around 9 or 10. By 14, he felt that this, this whole usage of adult material was kind of like addictions, right? It was some sort of a drug available free on smartphones and laptops 24/7. The guy became a fucking certified Coomer, right? So obviously, ultimately, at the end of the day, he said, listen, So basically, he spiraled into a very, very severe, mental health pit, which obviously I think anybody can really sort of empathize with. And he says, despite his parents' best efforts, the adult stuff was everywhere. The minute Facebook and Instagram know you're a young man, they're already going to be feeding you algorithms more explicit content. It was hard to get away from. With the help of his parents, he decided to jump 20 years into the past to a time before unlimited adult content was just a click away, replacing his iPod Touch with a flip phone and screen time with the outdoors. So, interestingly enough, even when it comes to Smith Alley's story, it wasn't so much that the government got involved and fucking decided to clamp down on the internet. His parents loved him enough to get involved and say, no beta, no more iPhone with the Kuman material available. Here is good old fashioned Engage. You can connect and play some fucking Tomb Raider and call us when you're done. The parents got involved. At the end of the day, the parents gave a shit. And I think if most parents gave a shit, this whole scourge of internet adult nonsense wouldn't really be that big of a problem. Not saying that it isn't a problem. Look, I'm an anti-Coomer kind of guy myself too, but there's a big difference between me not liking this stuff for what I think most of the community really thinks of. For me, I really dislike the industry behind adult content. And a lot of that has actually come from a video series that I did, not a series, but an actual video I did probably back in July 2020. It garnered 500,000 views. It was called the Trafficking Hub Investigation. It was a video where I spent an hour and 11 minutes looking into this huge campaign at the time. I was looking into this investigation, this sort of call from this religious group called Exodus Cry into the evils of adult content. I believe one of their people reached out to me, and I think she was trying to get me to make a video totally siding with them, but at the end of the day, it just became this sort of neutral investigation into the dirty, situation of adult content. And I wasn't really chastising people that partook in it, people that produced it. I was really looking at the corporate overlords around it. And when it comes to the big websites that sort of host this stuff, the disgusting, negligent oversight into basically not making sure even children are safe, in the sense that, a lot of adult content that was uploaded to these websites at the time seemed to have been underage children, and it really took, pulling every teeth in the proverbial mouth to get rid of the most disgusting content on the internet. So that's sort of my story attached to it, right? So to get back to the swing of things, right? To get back to what we're talking about, when it comes to this anti-VPN, the sort of VPN ban law that we've been talking about, well, it seems as if the TLDR here is that before it took effect, about 3 weeks, a company known as Aylo got involved and actually sued these people in federal court. And so basically, this has paused the actual law. It hasn't stopped it or completely abolished it, but it has paused the actual enforcement of it until, I believe, September of 2026. So the date necessarily isn't far off, but it's enough of a time for the arguments to consistently be made and maybe things to be turned around. And maybe if the actual adult video company in this case wins, maybe the law gets fucking struck down, right? So to give you an idea, Aylo is the company that is actually suing them in this case, and these are individuals that have rebranded numerous times, because I would argue that most of these disgusting, draconian mass surveillance laws have been applied because of, in my opinion, the massive amount of negligence that this company has showed. So you can see that they formerly were called Mansef, Manwin, then MindGeek, and then of course now they're called Aylo. The reason why they keep rebranding is they run some of the most top adult entertainment sites in the world. I mean, these are people making hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars every single year, running this entire, gamut on the internet. They're hosted all the way out in Montreal, Quebec, literally right next to me, right next to my province. These are the people that basically control the internet, adult video sphere. And these are not the kind of friends you want to have in this story. And the reason for that is, I would say, like in this entire video so far, they're probably one of the reasons why these laws, they're the people that provide ammunition for the lawmakers making these shitty laws, right? So you can see right over here in this lawsuit, Aylo was actually suing the Utah government, and this is again very recent, This is all about this new law that they introduced, SB 78, right over here. So again, the reason why Aylo, the adult website company going after the age verification law, is that they targeted that it basically went after the deemed location provision. So how the hell was anybody supposed to be verifying if, again, somebody was using a VPN to access their website or if they weren't, right? Which is very important, right? So again, Aylo has done I guess they've done all the compliance they can with all these laws being passed around the country, and they've basically been, they basically sort of been the corporation fighting against this law, because obviously you can imagine that it probably screws into all of their revenue, right? If you can't easily access their website to access all the videos you want, you'll probably go to some other unregulated website that doesn't fall under the legal umbrella that Aylo is subjected to. Now, ultimately, at the end of the day, too, right? Like, when it comes to Aylo as a website, there have been actual responses back from the age verification experts that say, listen, no matter what you look at the end, they still don't nearly do enough. So in this response, Lane Corby, the executive director of the Age Verification Provider Association, says, listen, Aylo is ignoring many ways websites already triangulate rough location of internet users, including those with VPNs, by monitoring time zones and advertising data. So what these age verification guys are saying is, listen, you gotta dig even deeper into the person's actual, what about people using private browsers? Hell, look into their browser fingerprinting, see where their systems are from. Again, VPNs don't instantly conceal who you are. For instance, if you do a browser fingerprint on your actual system, you'll find out you leak a lot of information that is unique to your specific computer. So for instance, if I do a quick browser fingerprint under my used browser, which is Brave right now, I've been using Brave for years, you can see that obviously they can isolate your time zone, they can isolate your operating system, they can identify you as a person, even if you are in cases behind a VPN. So let's say you are using a VPN to pretend you're in Japan, for instance. Well, if you look at the time zone, it's kind of irregular for somebody in Japan to have a time zone on their system that reflects the Eastern United States, right? So these are all things that, again, the critics of these adult companies who are suing the state for their shitty laws are criticizing them on. And honestly, from a technical perspective, I do tend to agree. Obviously, it's beneficial for companies like Aylo, for any adult website, or really any website, to be lax as much as they can, or just be compliant enough, because over-regulating and removing your, fucking stream of daily active users probably isn't great for business at the end of the day. So look, for now, it seems as though this has been paused. It seems like while this lawsuit is going on, while things are getting tested, things have been paused. Now, here's the reality of this situation. I don't think the people who are fighting for us, fighting with us on our side against mass surveillance and privacy, this being the company known as Aylo or Pornhub or anything, are actually good company to have. As I said throughout this video, these are the people who have, through their own decade plus of fucking non-compliance, of being so degenerately, what is the accurate word for it? Disregardful for all of this, that they have caused this whole hammer to drop. It's one of the things where I talk about, hey, when it comes to YouTube, when I make videos on shitty content creators that have are breaking and violating and destroying the YouTube terms of service or the YouTube system, it's mostly because if you self-police and get rid of the cancer, it's a lot better than when the hammer actually drops and the platform holder or the government over-regulates in that capacity. So the reason why I'm not such a huge fan of companies like Aylo basically being on our side is if you actually look into the history of them, and again, I have, when I looked at, the whole trafficking hub investigation, you can see that Aylo, when they were being investigated years ago, were totally okay with letting actual scumbags on their platform. So back when they were called MindGeek, before they were Aylo, before they rebranded to it, they were involved in a, sex trafficking civil lawsuit. So I'm going to go over this, kind of quickly. I'll actually probably make this into a own separate video because a lot has kind of happened, and it has a kind of a personal stake for me, given how much it's actually changed my life and my actions. It's why it's made me like a legitimate no-gooner, simply because it is just that fucked up to read. So, for instance, back in 2020, less than a year after, again, Sanford, Heisler, Sharp, McKnight helped secure this $13 million award in damages to 22 women who were illegally defrauded and coerced into making videos for this website called, GirlsDoPorn. So I'm going to call them GDP just to make it easier to read and to make it a little bit more compliant with YouTube's, sort of terms of services and friendliness. But the idea over it is that GDP basically hired a bunch of these women on at the time, and they basically told these women, hey, we're going to be filming private videos that we're going to be distributing to individuals that are not going to show up anywhere around you. And these women were like, okay, I'll film adult videos, right? They weren't told at the time that they were going to be posted on the internet for everyone, basically to see on one of the largest websites out there. So again, the complaint here says, the MindGeek, whose website in this case was the 8th most popular website in the US, made millions of dollars in profit by bringing GDP into its content partner program. So basically it was like the YouTube partner program, but for porn websites and porn studios. So when it knew as early as 2009 that GDP's San Diego-based owner-operators used fraud, coercion, and intimidation to lure its subjects into making videos, including by telling victims that the videos would only be sold as DVDs in foreign countries, right? So somewhere totally out of your purview. MindGeek participated in a trafficking venture by taking steps to promote their videos, GDP's videos, push the GDP brand, spread the GDP content through its network of various other websites, and maximize GDP's subscription sales. So collectively, all the plaintiffs in there were viewed 700 million times, a lot of fucking views. MindGeek continued to host and profit the videos even after victims filed suits against the GDP operators. So these were not like, hey, we're accusing you on social media. No, this was like actual fucking civil suits filed. And they only removed these videos after the US attorney filed criminal trafficking charges against GDP's 3 principals and the actual 3 principal owners and other individuals associated. And you can kind of read this all for yourself too, right? Ultimately, the end of the day, when it came to this exact site, GDP, they were basically accused in various of these civil cases, various cases of actually, coercing individuals illegally on their actual page and putting it and basically distributing it as if it was totally legal, 18 plus, 100% perfect, kosher, followed the law to a T adult videos. And a lot of people that click on these websites thinking, oh, I'm on this legal website, everything has to be legal, not necessarily the case. There was even another similar, not similar, but there was another case of an individual called Rose Kalemba who was basically filmed, when they were 14 against their will. That video was posted on the internet and, people were just on the same website, Pornhub in this case, watching that video. So while they were begging the website to take this video down, they were only able to actually make any headway when Rose, in this case, decided to do a boss fucking move and say, listen, at the end of the day, I'm just going to pretend to be a lawyer. So here she says the re-victimization that I felt hopeless to stop led me to consider really drastic actions. As a last resort, she contacts, the website again, this time pretending to be a lawyer. After I did this, the videos were removed within 48 hours. So not out of, hey, I'm being fucking re-victimized. No, once they got a legal stamp, once they realized, oh shit, the stakes are real, they decided to actually, get off their ass and do something, right. Do the right thing, basically. Now, when it came to GDP, obviously, at the end of the day, GDP, when they were captured and the whole case against them ran, they eventually did have to give out a statement. So for instance, right over here, after an extensive investigation by the US Attorney's Office and the FBI, the US Attorney's Office and Aylo have entered into a deferred prosecution agreement. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but from what I understand, this is not a formal admissal of a crime. This is them basically, basically your punishment is sort of deferred or staved off or moved away. As long as you follow the rules, the government sort of pushes to you. So for instance, they say that, again, when it came to the allegations that Aylo engaged in an unlawful monetary transaction with GDP, Aylo is not pleading guilty to any crime, and the government has agreed to dismiss its charges against the company after 3 years, subject to the company's continued compliance with the deferred prosecution agreement. Aylo deeply regrets that its platform hosted any content produced by GDP. While the production company provided the platforms with written documentation that purported to be consent forms signed by the women who were featured in the GDP productions, Aylo was unaware of GDP's criminal conduct. So effectively, they basically did the bare minimum of, in my opinion, compliance. And again, from a business perspective, sure, yeah, as long as you meet your requirements, it's cool. But when you're dealing with something like, humans and sexual movies, and this is a targeted like business that is, unfortunately subject to high cases of human trafficking, I think you have to go above and beyond just basic compliance and sort of be the trendsetter if you're going to be the #1 company internationally for this kind of shit. So basically, it really took like a long, strenuous lawsuit, criminal charges, to end up dealing with this stuff. And to give you an idea, the individual behind it, the owner, Michael Pratt, was somebody that was kind of on the run shortly after I'd even made that video, while this was running. I believe he was in I believe he was in like New Zealand at the time. And eventually he was like actually extradited 2025. So just kind of last year, not actually last year, but he was extradited. And just last year in this press release, he was sentenced to 27 years for trafficking hundreds of women, okay? This is the kind of guy, this was literally Aylo's boy, okay? This was one of their big content partners, okay? Insane shit. So basically you can see right over here, the owner and operator of GDP built a multi-million-dollar criminal enterprise by luring young women through lies, coercion, manipulation, and then broadcasting their abuse to millions online. So again, 40 women urged the court to hand down the maximum sentence. So again, it's not like this is some he said, she said. This was provable in the courts. They went in, dug through everything they can, unmasked the scheme, and gave the guy behind it, literally, 27-something years in prison. Pratt and his co-conspirators posted misleading ads, preyed on vulnerable women, promised them videos, would never be seen online. In reality, their employees posted the videos onto these websites. So again, a whole business built on just the most insanely disgusting practices one could ever think of. So yeah, it was not a good situation, and ultimately, at the end of the day, it shows you that the company that is most in line to protect you isn't exactly the friends you want to have in this battle, right? Which is one of the reasons why I think like the reason we're in the situation that we're in, this fucking mass surveillance pushing world, is because for the longest time, a lot of these companies did barely enough to actually really stop children from accessing their website. I mean, I was a kid, I grew up, right? The most these websites ever did was give you a little landing page that said, are you 18? No. Obviously, all of us lied and said, yeah, we're 21, bro. We're above 18. Went into the website, saw God knows what. And then, of course, at the end of the day, that's pretty much how this whole situation kind of sparked up, because now it's become a bigger problem. People can't easily ignore it. And again, the people that the people that are kind of on our side for privacy and safety and security are kind of just pieces of shit themselves. So it's made this whole situation where like covering this, it's like, I feel like the best way to kind of tackle this is to educate people on like, listen, it is important to stop children from accessing adult content because it can be harmful to their fucking brains. But the best way to do it is to have parents, and even in the story we read in this very video, the best thing you can do is as a parent, you come in, you police what your child is doing online, you make sure that what they have access to, even if they do have access to the latest and greatest smartphones, that you do go out of your way to implement parental controls to stop situations where kids can have access to this kind of content with such relative ease. And most importantly, sit and talk with your children, okay? Tell them that, hey, listen, consuming this kind of stuff online isn't really great for your mental health. It's not great for your perception of what you're expected as an adult later on down the road. And look, at the end of the day, some of the people that are involved, even on the cleanest looking sites, can just be pieces of shit themselves, right? As we've seen with the GDP story, right? Ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, it's a murky world to get into. But for now, one of the most invasive laws is being challenged by the shittiest companies out there. And the best way is, again, to educate parents on how to better protect themselves at their own personal home level, and also listen. these governments also don't care about protecting the kids, and they don't care about protecting those victims either. What they care about mostly is, again, creating the next wave of mass surveillance, allowing, again, third-party companies like Palantir in some cases, and their subsidiaries to come in and take the place of global age verification. And who knows what the government is going to do there once they have an ability to verify and checklist who goes where and who does what. So again, we want to live in a world where people have freedoms, people have the ability to access what they want on the internet. And yes, unfortunately, the grim truth of that is some content on the internet is going to be sitting there laissez-faire. So all we can do is tell the parents, listen, we know this exists, we know it has existed for a long time, but it is kind of up to you, because you are buying your kid access to like smartphones and laptops, to better police your systems anyways. At least, I don't know, that's the best avenue that I have in my head that is respectful of everyone. Kids, adults, so anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mudahar, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I am out.